I say we're a go.
Well, welcome back, everybody, and we're recording. So today we're going to go over a little bit of the kind of homework that we talked about for last time, and then do a little bit of breakouts and coming back and forth. But what we really want to talk about today is using different types of communication, or really just looking into communication as a way of illuminating the hidden curriculum, which will be fun and interesting, and started kind of as an inspiration for us from working with kids who didn't kind of process the world the exact same way as kind of the like small band that is the neurotypical kids that excel in school in listening to a teacher talk and then regurgitating information. If you're anything like me, you hated school, and you're working really hard to make camp as far from school as possible. And if you're not like me, that's cool too. We can still be friends. So, Sil.
All right.
What's up?
Well, I wanted to hear out a little bit what it was like for you guys to try to write a letter to a first-time camper about the hidden curriculum at camp, or like that would illuminate some of that hidden curriculum. What was that like? This is the part where you can just unmute and talk. And I think if there turns into being way more people or it doesn't work, then we can start doing it in the chat. But I think for now, if you did it and you want to give feedback, you can just jump in.
I was going to say, for me, it was surprising how much information I felt like they needed to know that they might not necessarily know. So trying not to turn a letter into a novel was tough.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's how I felt the first time I did it too. Like it was actually going to be a huge document with subsections, right?
Exactly.
I had the same issue. I felt that I wanted to include as much as possible to prepare them as much as I could, but I didn't want to make it seem too scary with a giant textbook about how to camp.
Right.
Anything like that.
Absolutely. And that's okay. That's part of why it's a good first exercise, because it starts getting us thinking about just how much there is.
I found it kind of tricky because I had the same issue that you guys are talking about. I know all kinds of things about, the ins and outs of camp, but then I was starting to think like, I don't actually know. So I have middle schoolers and high schoolers that are at camp, and it's a really large camp. And I thought, wow, I don't really know what the kids, like what's the hidden curriculum in the cabin? I don't know. How does it work with the kids? Because I'm in my position, not interacting with groups of campers in that way. So I just was thinking like socially, I wouldn't know what to tell this person of how to prepare really, because I'm not really sure. It made me feel a little bit, unfortunately, more disconnected from our camper population.
But that's good to know. Because it's possible that you could assign someone else to do this letter, which is also a nice little hack.
Well, and one of the things that we do is we have a few different people write these kind of letters, and it's informative for writing the letter, like for the people receiving the letter, but it's also really informative for me to, like you're saying, be able to hear what other people are seeing as the hidden curriculum. So during staff orientation, we'll sit around and have a bunch of people write these in groups of 4 or 5 and then share them with each other. And it's fascinating to see that what I wrote down and what Ethan wrote down have, some stuff that's in common. Like there are cabins, but, tons of variation, which I think is is really the beginning of doing some of this work to try and make camp a more inclusive space. So I love that, Jessica, and I think that's like kind of the exciting part for me.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I have a number of staffers that were former, like I've never been a camper at my camp, but I have staffers who've been a camper at my camp. So that I think getting their perspective would be really helpful.
And sometimes you get the perspective of a camper who's in their second year. Like what would a camper who did it for the first time last year, or at the end of their week, what would they say to somebody coming in who's new?
Yeah, the wide range of ages is a big difference. How a middle schooler is going to describe it is going to be completely different than a second grader.
Absolutely. absolutely. And that's okay, because the whole idea of this is like, as we get further and further along our inclusion journey, we're just expanding who we're doing a good job for a little bit each year. And that it's too intimidating to think that you would go from like here to finished this summer. And then it's sort of paralyzing, like now we're not going to do anything. So going from here to a little bit better is it's okay. I think you're your own internal drive on how far you can get. And a lot of times it's the campers who don't fit that push us to that next level. Like, okay, that didn't go well. Let me try to be better at it. That particular kind of kid, or like whatever that issue was.
That's definitely the approach that I took to my letter. I feel like my camp is different in its structure, that it is very academic. So oftentimes the kids that do come do have like a sense of like the way that school is, so they fit in pretty well, but it is a very specific science camp. And so I wrote my letter for my little sister who came to camp this past summer, who is not an animal person. She's not a science person. And so I kind of thought of it in a way of like, this is a good opportunity to be more inclusive to the kids who maybe are not like crazy about animals, and like just wanting all kids to come and have a good time, right? Like just because it's a specific camp doesn't mean that not everybody can come.
I love that. And I think taking it example by example is one way to kind of like zoom in on particular issues that then you can zoom back out on, like, okay, that makes sense for this one kid. Let me zoom back out and think about how does this make sense for different ages and different demographics or different wealth statuses? Like, how can I round out the work I'm already doing and get a little more bang for my buck from it? For this one kid, how can I make that into something that everyone could see? And that's, so later today, we're going to talk about different communication methods as a way to illuminate hidden curriculum. Like, how can we illuminate it via different communication methods besides just saying stuff? But I first want to get a little bit clearer on exactly what hidden curriculum might make sense to illuminate. So we're going to do a little breakout about different areas of camp in particular. How do you want to do this, Jack?
I was setting up the breakout rooms.
I thought that you were. So the areas of camp, I'm going to type these into the chat in just a second, that I want us to talk about are specifically the cabins. Like, what is hidden curriculum in a cabin? How is it different from home? How is it unexpected life in a cabin?
And when you say cabin, you mean like if you were a day camp, it's the group that you're with.
Right.
If it's a sleepaway camp, it's the actual cabin. We're just using the term cabin as
exactly.
the core
so
group.
Like life together in a group. And then if there's a space that they're doing their life together in, that space, whether it's like, how do we store our things by our like home-based picnic table, or how do we live in a cabin together? How do we change clothes? How do we like compromise that we have to travel together as a group and we're not the same speed? And then, so the life in a cabin or life in a cabin group is one area specifically that I want you guys to discuss in terms of what is the hidden curriculum in that group. Also the waterfront, if you guys swim, or the pool, like what is the hidden curriculum there? How do we act? Mealtime, whether it's in the dining hall or wherever you eat the meal, like what's the weird, campy, culty things we do around eating meals? What's the hidden curriculum there? And then what's the hidden curriculum around sort of unstructured downtime, like choice time? It isn't usually like really wide open, like you can do anything, but there is some element of choice. So what's the hidden curriculum there? Is it like how far away you can go? Is it what you pick to do? Is it who you do it with? Where is there expectations that are unspoken or informal, and what are they in these different areas? And so in your group, spend a couple minutes on each one and kind of take some notes for yourselves about what are those items of hidden curriculum in each of those areas. All right?
And I think I have the groups ready, don't worry. I think that it'll be different, obviously, for different spaces. So we swim in a lake Ethan just told us that they swim in the Sound, the Puget Sound. Lots of people probably swim in pools. That's all okay, right? But by trying to explain a little bit about your spaces, I think it'll help illuminate for yourself what is a little bit weird and what is a little bit different. Like in New York, we have these like weird tags that you have. They're buddy tags for swimming. You have to it's like a totally bizarre system that makes total sense to me because I grew up doing it, and is totally bizarre for like when we try and explain it to kids who have never been to camp before. They're like, you've what are you talking about? So just start from that point, and the goal isn't that you'll totally illuminate everything, but that you'll start to see those kinds of things in our groups. So I'm going to give everyone 5 minutes still.
Let's do 8, so that way it's like about 2 minutes per topic.
Dude, cool. Okay, well then I'm going to open the rooms, and then I'll make you come back, so you don't have to do anything except it'll force you to come back in 8 minutes. Ready, set, go. We're recording again. This is cool. And in 8 seconds, everyone's going to come back. It's going to be so fun. 3, 2, 1. That's so cool. That was the best part of the whole thing. I love that part. Everyone just flies back into the screen like popcorn. It's not really like popcorn, but you get the idea. Well, welcome back, everybody. How did your discussions about the different areas of camp go? I'm going to ask specifically about talking about eating. What were some things that you noticed as you started talking about eating as a group?
Noise level was definitely one.
Noise letter? Tell me more. Noise letter is what I said.
Noise level.
Yeah.
Just how loud it can be in the dining hall or in the cafeteria.
Yeah, for sure. I was at a camp conference at a camp in January, and it was all these Y camp directors, and it's like 300 people in the dining hall, and I couldn't eat the first meal. And I'm like a camp person, and I'm like, I love being loud, and it was just too overwhelming for me. I was like looking around all the time, like, what is this? And so imagining like kids coming and not knowing, I like knew that's what I was going to be doing. Like that can be really overwhelming, I think.
Yeah, I had a camper have an anxiety attack from our Monday night dinner last year. That it was his first time ever being there, and the dining hall was so loud and so rambunctious. And what I was just explaining to my group is we eat family style, and so everything is pretty much good to go the second that they're in the dining hall, and that can be incredibly overwhelming because it's, once again, do you eat family style at home or do you not? Who serves what? What's the portion size? What can I get? All of those things, which are supposed to be understood by my counselors, not always understood by my counselors. And noticing that child having that freak out, which was not noticed. And so like all the differences that can happen, like you were saying, in that single meal is crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of debate about buffet style, family style, bring your own food, all that. That's a fine debates to have. I'll say we do most of our meals family style. We do our first meal as pizza on a buffet line. And so kids just arrive and mostly know how to eat pizza. So it's like, it's easier. And a line backs up. And normally I'm anti-line, but I kind of like the line on that because I stand outside the door and can like see the kids that are starting to get overwhelmed. So just a decision we made. We moved away from any announcements before the meal. Kids arrive and get pizza. They sit down, and then in the middle of the meal, we make an announcement about what's going to happen next. So just a little thing we've done. I don't know if it has worked for everyone, but it's started for us. What are some other things you notice about eating?
My group talked about how we don't have any dining halls or tables or anything. So sometimes we'll eat in the camp room, or we just sit on the floor, or if we're at the park, we'll sit on the grass. And we talked about how that can be different for a lot of kids, like getting dirty or eating in the grass, or I don't know, sitting in the dirt kind of just seems dirty and you don't want to feel dirty while you're eating. And so that can be a hurdle for some kids, definitely, and counselors.
We have the same issues as well. We're a day camp, an arts camp outside, and we don't have a dining hall or anything. Kids bring their own food, and so they can basically go and eat anywhere in camp. They just can't be in the art areas during lunchtime. So the challenge is there really are no rules. So and some of them feel like there should be rules, and so they're looking for them, and we're like, no, you can eat wherever you want, and they just not sure what to do with that, or what happens if I accidentally dump my food on the ground. That kind of thing. So there's those challenges of like complete lack of structure, and you can go and do anywhere you want and just feeling a little bit lost by that. Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that is interesting about something like that is like you can eat in any of these specific like any of the areas except for this one, but there probably are like some cultural norms around where some people eat, right? So like
Definitely.
normally most of the kids eat in the blah 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 or whatever, and like that hidden curriculum is the part that I think is about that we're hoping to illuminate to help kids be like, you know what, I don't want to make a choice here. I'm just going to go eat where the other kids eat, and I'm just going to do my thing and kind of stay silent for the first day until I learn how this whole place works.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I thought about as I'm listening to all of this. It's like having a place to go, not sure where to go or where to eat, come here, and it's just kind of a backup plan. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. So
what about let's just hear a couple more out about swimming. What's some hidden curriculum about swimming?
Well, we do a buddy system, and we do like swim tests when they first get there. And so doing a swim test the very first day of arrival can be very daunting. Having a yellow wristband because you didn't pass the swim test and everyone else that's your friend did is very daunting. Having a buddy that matches your swimming ability, if there's people playing volleyball, how do I also get to play volleyball in the water? How do I get to go down the slides? How do I get to be nowhere near the pool? I was that camper that actually hated swim time and like just wanted to play cards on the deck. So how does that look on the pool deck? How do you enter even the pool deck area? Because we have a whole lineup with your buddy system before even stepping onto the pool deck. So we have a lot that goes into our pool time.
We have a lot of similar things. And then also we have a camp uniform that everybody wears. So we have rules around going to the pool in your uniform, and then like where you change out and where you keep your stuff, and like how all that works when you're entering the pool area and when you're leaving.
Well, so we have locker rooms to change. And I know a locker room setting is very different and challenging for a lot of kids that haven't ever experienced anything like that. And so we have 2 locker rooms that you can go into, whichever one that you identify most with. And I know there's lots of rules that have to, we go over like, you only go in and out of your clothes in the changing stall, 1 person in the stall at a time, no peeking, things like that. And we have little bins that they can put all their extra stuff in. And you have to make sure, like, put your swim bins underneath the benches over here on pool deck or anything like that. And then making sure that they understand that once they're done changing, they go sit and they don't jump in the pool without anyone knowing or without the rest of the group.
what about for in the groups, whether it's at your cabin or at your picnic table or when you're moving from place to place?
So we talked about the idea of just sharing in general. And that not only are you going to, regardless if you have a cabin or not, you're sharing attention, you're sharing toys, you're sharing, the entirety of the space. So that can be definitely an overwhelming and a new concept for a lot of people who are not used to having to wait a turn or to have to wait to use, a certain hook or anything like that.
Sil, how can we help communicate this kind of stuff to people in a way that's digestible and not a 300-page letter? that no one's going to read.
Well, thanks for asking, Jack. So I talk about this topic a lot because a fair amount of my work is with kids on the autism spectrum. And I learned a lot about different communication methods from knowing people with autism. So at camp, the main vehicle or medium that we use to explain or teach or connect is out loud. Like we say stuff. We're just talking all day long, and that's okay. It's convenient. We're outside. The information is in our head. We don't always have a lot of time to prep, but like talking out loud is not always the easiest way to actually absorb information and keep the information. As we know from having attended many lectures ourselves, is that it's really hard to keep all the details of an out loud like speech or presentation, especially if you're in a group and you maybe didn't start paying attention until partway through, or you didn't realize it was important until it was almost over, or it was hard to hear. So one of the things I want to talk about today is all the ways we can get our information across or get our point across without talking. And so a lot of camps, I'm just going to say a bunch of them, and then we're going to do a breakout where you guys are going to do short brainstorms in each category of communication about what you could do to illuminate the hidden curriculum in those different areas of camp in different communication methods that aren't just talking. Are you with me? Okay. So one method is a video. How can you actually literally show in a video what happens on camp? Another one is to put up signs or make cartoons about what happens at camp, like comics. How can you put up signs like in procedural signs, like how-to signs, but also like very hidden curriculum signs, like it's going to be loud in here on the outside of the dining hall, or if you want, anyone can have seconds, but you have to wait for everyone to go. Things like that that are that you might think that everyone would get, but they don't get. So another method is schedules. Like, how can you have transparency about the schedule without having to say over and over again when lunch is? What's a method you can communicate what is going to happen within one activity in a schedule, like a list, like a how-to list or a mini schedule within an activity. I think another method is modeling or narrating, which is out loud, but it's like it goes with a visual. So narrating is like, if you guys are my campers and Jack's my co-counselor, and I'm looking around at you guys and Jack's leading like some crazy kooky Jack game, and I see that that Devin's like has that little bit of deer in the headlights look, or he's looking kind of annoyed, like, who are you people? Then me as the narrator, I might go over by him and just start sort of narrating out loud the hidden curriculum that I'm seeing. Like, yeah, Jack's like acting all crazy like this because he likes making everyone laugh, but actually he's a pretty good listener. And a lot of things at camp are like this. They're all wild and crazy, but underneath, everyone really cares about each other. And it's okay to like take your time and take some getting used to, or something like that. So I might be narrating out loud.
The first time that I think like 18-year-olds or 20-year-olds do this with kids, it kind of feels pretty awkward because you're like, what am I doing? But one of the ways that we start to model it in staff training to give them a chance to do this before kids arrive is we ask that you kind of illuminate or narrate inside jokes with the rest of staff. So at all of our camps, there's lots of history and weird jokes and little things. And so Sil is the one that I noticed doing this first, where we would be somewhere and we'd be like talking to one of her old friends, and then she would kind of like pause and be a group of 4 or 5 people and look at me and go, hey, yeah, so like actually like Amos and whatever, and this is what's going on, and let me give you a quick background on this, and then you're back into the story. And it's like, the first time you do it, it's like awkward, and then after that, it's one of the most welcoming things that a friend can do for you. And so once you can see that as a staff person, that you're not like pandering kids or like being weird about it, you're just like doing what you would want your best friend to do, it becomes so much easier, I think, for our staff to do that with young people and not have it be like they're like, yeah, like, I don't know, some old person is just trying to tell me how to live my life. It's like, no, they're just trying to let me in on kind of the secret of the inside knowledge of this place.
So this is a pretty good list to start with, especially because most camps don't have too much of these specific items about the hidden curriculum. One of the things I want to illustrate before you go into your brainstorm sessions is that the kind of things that you want to show in these might just be regular everyday camp things. Because again, when we've been doing camp for a long time, we're kind of taking for granted what's obvious, like eating 3 meals a day. Might seem obvious that that's what we're doing at camp. We actually eat more like 5 times a day if you include snacks, but that might not be obvious to everyone who's coming to camp, depending on your population. It might not be obvious that like somebody like that the nurse has your meds and somebody's going to bring them. That might not be obvious. It might not be obvious that like, what do you do if you don't like something or you don't want to do something? That part is like, I mean, really, like the kids have behavior about not wanting to do something, like in families and schools, everywhere they go, because we haven't been very clear about what you're supposed to do if you don't want to do something. So we've sort of like given them no other option but to have shenanigans in place of a good model, because we haven't been obvious about what they should be doing. And same at camp. So, okay, we're going to go into our breakouts, and in your breakout room, this is what you're going to do. You're going to take each one of these and you're going to do a quick round robin brainstorm, like, how could you use a video to illuminate the hidden curriculum? What are a bunch of ways to do that? Is it before summer even starts? Is it like everybody watches a video like while they're standing in line on opening day? Is it your cabin watches a couple videos together and then asks questions? Like, how could you use videos? What would you video? And when would you use them? You don't have to decide all that. It's just a little brainstorm sesh. Then with your signs, like, where on camp do you spend your time saying the same thing over and over and over again? And then could there be a sign there instead? Or how can you like give a reminder or an expectation in the place where it needs to happen? Like if there's some rule about changing or showering, how can you show that rule or expectation in the place where they need it? Like one person at a time in the changing rooms, or put your bins here, or like if you need privacy, you do this, or pick a locker room that fits the gender you most identify with. How could you make that obvious without having to say it out loud? So you're going to go through your whole list and kind of do brainstorms with each of those models, and then we're going to come back and talk about it.
So you can join the same breakout rooms. You just kind of hover down at the bottom of your screen, and it should say breakout room, and you can join it again. And if that doesn't work,
I don't have that on mine.
all right, well, we're going to end all the breakout rooms. And now try. You're going to have 6 minutes. Is that okay, Sil?
Yeah, that's great.
6 minutes. See you in 6, and I'll bring you back. Don't worry. We're recording. And we're back. Ready? 3, 2, 1. That was cool.
Welcome home, everyone. So will you write your favorite idea that you heard, put it in the chat.
Put it in the chat, but don't send it yet. Don't send it yet. Don't send it yet. Just put it in the chat.
Jack's game.
Don't send it. Don't send it. Don't send it. Don't send it. All right. All right. Here we go. I'm going to give you, we're going to send it in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Send it.
Ooh, a day in the life. Love the video for carpool. Nice. Great. Love these.
I love the 3 things. What's happening now? What's happening next? What's happening next? What's happening after next? And I can imagine all of the staff having little whiteboards that they could just write that on. Like, so it's like now, next, next, next. And you could just like hold it up and be like, next is da 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 da. And then, so you sold me on whiteboards.
It's a beautiful thing. So the reason that we're talking about this especially is because one of the difficult inclusion situations that camps get into is in when campers who think differently come to camp, whether or not they have an autism diagnosis or a different kind of diagnosis. Although a lot of times autism, I get a lot of calls from camps who have some campers with autism and it didn't go well. And I'm going to attempt to do like a 5-minute autism basics. Is that possible? I'm going to try. Jack, you cut me off. So one of the things that makes being a person with autism really difficult at camp, and I'm sharing this experience on behalf of adults and campers with autism who have shared their experience with me, is that audio communication is especially difficult for kids with autism. So talking to them is the hardest way for them to pick up information, even though it's the easiest for you, it's the hardest for them. So if you're going to like get across an idea to a camper with autism, you have to do it visually. It's easier for them if you do it in writing or showing. And so especially if a kid is like close to meltdown, like they're really upset, just like when any of us are really upset, that's not the time for someone to come in and be all coolly logical and tell me stuff, right? Like if you can imagine the last time you were like super upset, either like crying or super angry, and if at that point someone came up to be like, this is not appropriate, would you be like, thank you, appreciate the feedback, right? No, almost everybody is like 2 middle fingers, I need my space, get away from me. So when a camper with autism or any camper is having a big meltdown, that's not the time to talk. And that's one of the reasons why I want you guys to be in practice of all these other methods of communicating, so that when the time comes, like maybe you've helped them get through their day by having all these visuals, but then if the time comes that somebody's really losing it, that's your chance to like zip it, stop talking, and give some processing time. Processing time is the other really important, like when people are like process information differently, processing time is like your best friend in communicating with them. And processing time is the window of time between when I ask a question or say a statement. It's that little window of silence before they talk. And for a lot of us, we think that people should be answering us like within a second and a half. Like about that amount of time, it starts being awkward, right? And for people that don't process audio information as quickly, or who aren't prioritizing the noise of your voice over all the other noises that are occurring, they need longer. So if you say something or ask a question to somebody, I want you to practice giving them like an extra 5 or 8 seconds. That's a pretty long time in terms of like conversational awkwardness, but it's not really that long in the grand scheme of things. You've cleared your schedule to be there all summer. You probably have 5 or 8 seconds to give to a kid who's having a hard time. So that.
Okay, Sil, that's it.
Thank
That's all
you.
you get. That's all you get. I think there's tons more that you could talk about, obviously, about autism and all kinds of things, but I think that there was 2 big takeaways, and I'm going to add a third one that you touched on a little bit. One is do things that are like, try and get in the practice of writing or showing for as many things as possible at camp with all kids, because we have no idea, even if we have really thorough forms, we actually have no idea what any of the kids in our groups are like looking or thinking when they're at camp, right? 2 is give a little bit more space and time. And this, I would guess a lot of you are like, yeah, I get all this. But like, imagine you as an 18-year-old. I remember me as an 18-year-old. I had no idea about any of this stuff. So being really explicit with a lot of our new staff is huge. And then 2 is giving a little bit more space when we give instruction or ask questions for time to respond. And that can look like a lot of different tactics that I'm sure you know, but remembering to teach those to new staff. And then the third one, and so I've heard you talk about this a lot of times, and you touched on this about when somebody's upset, but the really practical thing here is if a camper's having a meltdown, making sure we're teaching the rest of our staff that it's okay as long as everyone is safe, to just take a deep breath and a step back and let the camper be upset. And maybe we're going to talk to them. Maybe we're going to write them a note, or maybe we're going to radio or somehow get some help. But that the best thing to do when a camper is very upset is not to talk to them anymore. And like a lot of you are like the directors or the people who have like helped solve these problems. And sometimes I feel like a superhero when I get called into a meltdown situation, and I like walk over and the kid's just been like really going crazy, and then I walk over and I'm like, yo dude, you want to go for a walk? And they're like, yeah, sure, I'll go for a walk. And like I'm like, yeah dude, I'm the best. But actually it's just because the counselor like ran out of things to do, so they finally just sat down and just like didn't say anything, and so the kid had time to just chill out, and then I'm the superhero. But actually it's just the time. And maybe it's because the director does have like a little bit more sway. They're like the principal. There's like a lot of things like that. But a lot of times it's just time. So 3 things: give more time when we give instructions, write things or show things, give more time when kids are upset. If we can teach our staff those 3 things, we go a long way toward finding ways to be really inclusive of lots of different people when they're at camp.
And part of the point of the whole thing, like illuminating the hidden curriculum in general, specifically illuminating it in different communication strategies, not just out loud, all of that serves to reduce anxiety in new people or people who are unfamiliar with our environment. And when we can reduce anxiety, we're giving people back their coping bandwidth so that they can bring the skills they have to the surprises that we couldn't anticipate. And so when we communicate more about what's going to happen, what's expected, what is this like, who is everyone, when we communicate about those things and we do it in a way that they can understand, a method they understand, then everyone gets to bring their best self to our group instead of using up their coping bandwidth, just like dealing with our crazy culty space. Okay, let's do takeaways from today. Should we do them in the chat? All right, what's your favorite takeaway from today? And then we'll do homework.
So I started this out by saying maybe we weren't so much like school, but okay, we're doing takeaways and homework now.
Yeah, I know.
This is big for me. I'm growing up.
But we're also passing out degrees.
Oh, cool. All right, ready? 5. We're going to put it in the chat in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom! I was a little early on that one. I apologize.
All right, I love all those. So my idea for homework is one more part of your sort of inclusion toolkit. And what I want you to do for homework is to pick one of the like strategies that you thought to do before camp starts, like one of the illuminating the hidden curriculum things, either a video beforehand or a letter or like a story with pictures of camp that illuminates some aspect of the camp hidden curriculum before camp. I want you to start making it between now and our next time. If you can't get all the way done making it because it's like a video you're going to actually make and produce, that's okay. But I want you to get started on it. And if you can get it all the way done, great. If you can't, that's okay. But the starting is usually the part we put off. So let's at least start it between now and next week. Does that make sense? All right. And we're,
Can you just repeat that?
Yeah.
One more. Yeah.
So you know how we were talking about, okay, let's look at all these different strategies, videos and signs and stories and all that. And then we talked about it, and some of them were things that you would want to get in kids or families' hands before camp starts, to illuminate the hidden curriculum before they even get there, and or to recruit new people because they realize what camp is all about. So if there was something in that list that you thought of or somebody thought of that would happen before camp starts, then I want you to get started making it with the idea that you could potentially use it this summer. Because you could maybe actually finish it and get it in the hands of camper families before camp starts. And even if it's only writing what the schedule is for a regular camp day with a little note as an email, that eliminates the hidden curriculum for campers before camp starts. That's one of the things people call about, right? If you're a camp director, don't people call you and that they're like, well, what do you do during the day? And then you're like, take a deep breath, and then you run down like the big points of the day, right? What if we just wrote those down and sent it out so everyone had it? Or what if we had a video or whatever that showed like, this is what the cabin looks like, this is where you store your stuff, so that families are like, oh, well, in that case, I'm not going to send this giant trunk, I'm going to send a regular size suitcase. Or the kids like, oh, that's awkward, where am I supposed to change? I'm going to bring some contraption to change in or whatever.
Well,
Okay.
and I think on that, Sil, the big thing that I've learned from you is do that and then add this one line for packing or for those kind of things. That's just most people, and then insert whatever you want everyone to do. Like,
yes.
so most people bring
add
this
a donation onto their stuff. Yeah.
Most people bring this size thing. Most
Right.
people bring a few extra pencils so they can write letters home.
Right.
Most people
bring shower shoes because it's gross. It's not required. Right. That kind of thing.
And then that becomes true if it isn't true, or it lets people know what the third year camper does that like really gets how the space works.
It makes people an insider. Okay. Thank you for your time and attention today, and we'll see you next week.
And I'll post this again in the Facebook group.
Yeah. Okay, bye, friends.